Most people, when they give up on their goals, it's because things aren't working out as they expected them to. And that the goal is not the problem. The problem is the expectation of how you are going to get to that goal.
I wanted to become a woman of my words. So if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. There are moments where you're not going to be your word, but knowing that I actually tried to hit my goals, it's okay too, so I'm going to forgive myself and also wake up every day and try.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Interracial Couple Podcast.
Where it's not all black and white. My name is Sarah, I'm black.
I'm Matthew, I'm white. And today we are going to be the bearer of bad news or good news, depending on how you choose to view the situation. And that news is...
you are going to fail
at your 2021 goals, or what do you call those? New Year's resolutions. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
I've already failed, and I'll share mine, how I failed on the 2nd of... was it the 2nd or the 3rd?
It doesn't really matter. But we wanted to talk about that because it becomes this thing, as you probably are aware, 2021 is a different year than most. You can't necessarily go and join the gym, depending on where you live. And if you're in one of those places where you can't join the gym or you can't show up, then that makes this year very different from every other year where gyms have to cram, give everyone extra hours, hire extra people for January and February.
And half of March. And by March 15th, I believe, by the Ides of March, we're just kind of back to whatever those old patterns were. One of the things that tells me is that, they say, something becomes a habit after 7 days or 30 days or whatever kind of number people come up with. It's so not true.
Dude, I can work out for 30 days and not touch a weight again for another year easily.
I actually used to think that it's true. Like, only do this for 21 days and then it becomes easier to do. I was like, I go on a run every single day, and every single day, that shit is hard. Yep. Like every run, maybe it becomes easier to run 5 miles after you've been running 2 miles, but that 5 miles doesn't come easy. It still takes effort.
And also just the kind of the rhythm around it, because even when we were living in Kenya, we had a really good rhythm for a while. I had a really great rhythm for running. I was training for a marathon. Then after that, we had a great rhythm. You had a goal of putting on 10 pounds of muscle. So you had a really good rhythm. And then, COVID came, and then we had to move and all these things. And how much have you, cumulatively, how many hours have you spent lifting weights since we left Kenya?
Not very few.
Under 10?
No, more than 10, I would say.
Under 20?
Under 20.
Okay. Yeah, and I would probably say
just
the same
because
thing.
COVID hit, I had a rhythm, I had a routine that, I would go to the gym at the same time, but then, things changed and we moved, and that just, the routine was thrown off. And it took me months to build a new routine of where I can still, first I had to get access to weights. There was jet lag. There were just so many things. And as I'm getting older and becoming, I guess, more something in life is going to throw off the rhythm, So how do you continue fighting for your goals and keeping your goals when you know that the rhythm, it's going to change?
Yeah.
Because life is uncertain.
And so that's why when we kind of brought this up, is this is either good news or bad news. Because, Because if you know right from the beginning that it's not going to happen, then you can also change how it happens. And then actually, I think that becomes the key for later. How do you actually hold to it? And let's go back to what you just said about your New Year's resolution that you were not going to eat dessert this year.
Oh my God. So I decided I'm looking at my goals for this year. I decided that after Christmas, I just ate so much dessert. And as someone who grew up in Kenya, I just didn't grow up eating dessert. And it doesn't bring me joy. I don't like sugar necessarily. And I was like, I can live without dessert and not feel sad. To me, if someone was like, Sarah, you gotta quit drinking wine, I would be sad because I like the taste of wine. I like drinking wine. But dessert is just And then, so that was, when did we do our New Year's resolution?
Well,
When did we write them down?
I think this was actually on New Year's Eve when we worked. We've got these big sheets of paper and we've hung them up so we can see them from where we're sitting. And yeah, so that was on New Year's Eve that we did this.
Yeah. And anyway, on the 3rd of January, I was like,
we had a difficult conversation.
We had a really difficult conversation as a family, and I was feeling really stressed out. And I was like, literally, I need ice cream. Like, usually I'm not the type of person who will like have a difficult conversation and then feel like I need a sugar rush. But I was like, I just needed something. And I was like, I just went into the fridge and I was like, I am having ice cream. And once I had the ice cream, I was like, and I'm still keeping my New Year resolution of not having dessert. Just because it means like on the 3rd of January, I had ice cream doesn't mean that I threw my goals out the window. But a couple years ago, like that would have been like what I would have done. I would like, you know what? I said I was not going to do it, but I did it. And so it just means I should just keep doing it because I didn't do it, you know? And so the next day I would have a little bit of more dessert, or when dessert showed, but I had the ice cream and the commitment for 2021 is still the same. And when I feel like having ice cream, I'll have ice cream and forgive myself and move on.
Yeah. And I just from knowing you, I know it's probably not going to happen very often, but when it is, that recommitment. And I think that's something that when people say I have a New Year's resolution, you can have a New Year's resolution for 2021, not fulfill at some point, and then say, you know what? I'm resolving again in 21 for the rest of 21. And there's so much of this thing that happens that when you want to do something and then you don't, you can easily start giving yourself a hard time. You can feel really bad. And so therefore this kind of relationship to it is really, that's the important thing. It's your relationship to it. You know, and I also, for you, like when you went to have ice cream, I was like, well, it's not dessert because it's not right after dinner. And is ice cream dessert if it's what you have for dinner? Or even better, you know, I'm going to have pancakes with lots of maple syrup on it and call it breakfast. Therefore, I'm still not having dessert.
Oh, actually, I did do that. I forgot that I had waffles and your dad's.
Yeah, with whipped cream and everything, but it wasn't dessert because my dad served it for breakfast.
I literally had forgotten that. And what else did I make as a goal last year that I failed? Well, what did you fail? Let's start with you.
I did have certain financial goals that I did not hit.
Okay.
I was going to launch a full course last year on my creativity course. That didn't happen. I was going to finish the outline of my next book. That didn't happen. I was going to finish the proposal for my next documentary. That didn't happen. I was going to read 26 books last year. That didn't happen. Now, I can kind of go on to all those things that didn't happen. When I looked back, actually, you told me that that there's someone that you follow who tries to make 100 goals every year. That way, if they can get 30 of them, they feel good. And so I went kind of back and I thought, well, I actually got kind of close to about 30% of what I had set out to do. And I should say, we differentiate goals from intentions. And it takes a little bit of pressure off of certain things, but it also lends gravity and importance to others. That way, when we sit down at the beginning of the week is, what is an intention? What do we want to hold? And what is something that is going to be a priority, as in it's a goal? And those things, I think, can be pretty important. But last year, I failed on quite a bit. But the failure, and this is why this is so important, it's great to fail. It's great to fail. And part of that is because one of the things that you and I do is when something is not happening as we imagined, we look and we say, well, what new is emerging instead? You know?
Yeah, as I feel like the great thing about failure is that you actually are doing something, you know? Even though it doesn't work out, you are doing something. So what happened instead of you writing the manuscript?
Well, instead of that, we wrote and published The Lover's Journal.
We did.
Super exciting.
It was not it was not in any of our goals, but for 2020, it took most of our time and our energy and our resources, money, you know? it came out of all the goals and intentions that we had. Because one of our last year goal was like, let's start this podcast.
Yeah. And that was 2020. And we high five. We have not missed a week of podcasting since we began.
No, I am really proud about that. We were like, we are going to record a podcast every week for 2 years. And it's been a year.
It's been a year. And we are looking at this saying, okay, well, and it wasn't that we won't do it after 2 years, but it was that come hell or high water for the next 2 years, we're going to do this and see what emerges from it. And one of the things I think is so cool is we started this year when everything went topsy-turvy. We had to leave Kenya due to COVID, all this other stuff. One of the things was that this actually, the Lover's Journal that we wrote, it was born out of this particular initiative that we set as a goal. If I looked back and said, you know what, if we had failed at doing the podcast every week, the other thing would have been to look and say, yeah, we might have not done that, but something was born out of that was really vital.
Yeah, and if we had missed, and maybe we will miss, a podcast in the future, I feel like you keep going. I think that's, to me, is like the thing that I want to keep reminding myself, because I used to fall into the category of people. It's like, if it doesn't happen once, then it stops becoming a goal. And I was just like, no, that is not true. Like, I can fail once. I can not record a podcast 1 or 2 times, but I will keep going.
Yeah.
And,
I think Maria Nemeth said that, which was really nice, which is that most people, when they give up on their goals, it's because things aren't working out as they expected them to. And that the goal is not the problem. The problem is the expectation of how you are going to get to that goal. So I had a goal of getting the children's book that I wrote published. That didn't happen. I didn't find a publisher for that yet. So there were a lot of these different, there were goals that, that didn't happen. But I also think that, that other things come from that are really important. And, I've kind of given up on beating myself up on what didn't happen, but instead looking at what happened instead. Because, I say this with people I work with all the time. If you said you were going to do something and you didn't, what took its place? And you can learn so much about your priorities, what is important to you based on what took its place. If you said, I'm going to write this year and instead I watched a lot of Netflix, sometimes people would say, like, I wanted to, write a book and instead I watched a lot of Netflix. And so that's a bad thing. The other thing would be to say, okay, well, now you get to see that as a priority. And why was that a priority? You learn so much more about yourself when you look at your failures, quote unquote failures, and saying, why did that happen? What emerged instead? And I think that that's super, super important, because sometimes you just need to chill out and watch some dang Netflix for a little while.
Seriously.
Like, you need that recharge. And if you don't have that recharge, you might not get to do it. And if you feel bad about that recharge, then it's not really a recharge. And then at the end of the day, you really feel like you have nothing, instead of, you know what? I watched 5 Netflix shows in the last couple of months. And like, God, I needed that. And now I'm ready. And that's okay.
That's okay too. Oh, for those who are watching this, like, I forgot to move my journal. So if you're wondering what this is the Lover's Journal. I'm going to put it aside.
And we're going to let you know right now, as the podcast gave birth to the Lover's Journal in many ways. It was really bringing awareness and consciousness to our relationship and how we relate to each other within our relationship. And we're super excited about it. The Lover's Journal is prototyped, it is ready for printing, and you can actually get your very own. If you pre-order it before January 31st, you get it at a 30% discount, and you'll be a part of the very first edition version that is waiting to be printed. And we'll be ready in time for Valentine's Day for anyone who makes an order before January 31st. So if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast host, look at the show notes where you will see the link to get it. If you're on YouTube, you'll see it in the comments below. And you can also check out us all over our social media. We are making a big stink about it because it is pretty awesome.